Hi everyone, this is Sean Ismail from the Cloud Ranger, and you're viewing the Microsoft Azure training. Today is the part 4 of our Azure Virtual Machines, and I'm going to talk about Azure VM Data Disks. And this happens to be one of those very important topics for your exams. And not only that, it happens to be also one of the most important things you'll probably be doing in your production environment if you are working with cloud in your organization. You are going to be very lucky if you are working in an organization who has nothing, for example, like a startup, and they come and tell you that, hey, build the environment for me on the cloud, because you know exactly what to do. You create the networks, you create, the IP address schemes, you go and create virtual machines, and you start from scratch. However, most of us are not that lucky. We are already working in organizations who already have on-premises established infrastructure. So chances are they are probably talking about how to extend that infrastructure from on-premises to the data center, like most cloud taglines are, that, extend your data center to the cloud. Or they will be like, okay, we have some stuff on premises now. We need to take this and pretty much migrate everything to the cloud. And then you have to take all those physical servers and convert them to VMs, or take those VMs and take those to the cloud. And this is why this session happens to be very important, because that's what we are going to do with respect to data disks. Now, let's get started because we have a lot to cover. So there are two types of VHDs in Azure. You have disks and you have images. And you are already, I'm assuming that you're already familiar with what VHDs are, virtual hard drives that are there with your virtual machines. If not, then you really have a lot of background work to do to find out what VHDs are and how they work. But in Azure, there are two types of VHDs, which are, first one is the OS, the operating system, and the data disk VHDs. And then you have the images from where we have been making all our virtual machines from. So the OS and the data disks now both can be 1 TB. If you look at the documentation at present, you'll see that most of the documentation still has the old information, where they say the operating system can be only 127 gigs, which is no longer true. You can have an operating system up to 1 TB now, and your data disks up to 1 TB as well. And then you have images VHD. Images are something that we have been using quite a bit. If you don't realize by now, is that every time we were trying to create a virtual machine, we actually went to the image gallery, and we did not have to put in an ISO file or select an ISO file and install the Windows and do all of that. All we did is pick on an image and the virtual machine was created for us. So images happen to be very, very important to Azure environment. And these images are basically templates on your on-prem. So if you're working with VMware or Hyper-V, the templates are what this is, that you already have a virtual machine that you have installed, modified, configured the way you want it, and you deploy virtual machines off them. So that's what is called images in Azure. So VHDs can be uploaded from your on-premise to Azure. So like I said earlier in that little conversation we were having, where I was telling you that, hey, you know what, you are going to be an environment which already has everything established. So chances are that someone is going to come and tell you, hey, take this data VHD that's on-premise, attached to a virtual machine, upload it to your Azure, and attach it to a virtual machine you have created there. And this can be for both data disks and OS disks, or VHDs. In this session, we are only going to be concentrating on number one, which is the data VHDs that can be uploaded, okay? Among many other things, that's one thing we are going to do. And chances are that happens to be one of the most important things for production, because you will be already working in an environment where things are already there. Okay, so there are a few things to remember when it comes to Azure VHDs or data disks or OS disks, is that the maximum size of the OS VHD is now 1 TB, as well as for the data VHD, like I mentioned earlier. Uploading to Azure does not support VHDX. And a lot of you are going to raise that flag and say that, why can't we do VHDS? I just thought that we are going to VHDX because things are so much better in generation 2 if you're in Hyper-V or wherever, right? Well, when Azure was being built and their underlying environment that they have currently, and by currently I'm saying now it's 2015, they do not support VHDX. It's only VHDs. So you have to remember one thing. If you are already in an environment and somebody says, take this data disk or OS disk and upload it to Azure, You can't do that. You will have to first convert that VHDX to VHD before you can upload that, or even Azure takes it. It's a little bit of a pain in the rear, but you have to do that. And I'll show you the command to actually do that. I'm not going to go through the entire process, but I'm going to show you the command that you can do that on your current environment of at least Hyper-V. Um, the other thing you have to remember is that you can only do fixed size disks in Azure. I'm sure a couple of you are going ballistic right now thinking that, okay, first you say no VHDX, now no dynamic disks. No, you cannot upload dynamic disks. But the good part is that if you actually have a dynamic disk, it will be converted to a fixed disk when it's being uploaded to Azure. And the other good part about this uploading is as well is that even though it's converting it to a fixed disk, it is not going to be the entire size. The upload algorithm is very smart and it finds out the data that's only written and only uploads that to make sure that if 40 gig disk is not, and you're only using like 20 gigs out of that, it's not taking that entire 40 gigs of time and uploading 40 gigs of nothing in there. No, it does not do that. However, as we talk about uploading, I wanted to put that same point in there is that this is not the same as downloading. So think about this. If all the disks in VHDs in Azure are fixed, when you're downloading it, will it be converted to dynamic and only be downloading the stuff that's already written? No. Unfortunately, when you're downloading the VHD from Azure, if it's a 40 gig disk, it will be a 40 gig disk. So there are two things to remember there, that you always have the right kind of space before you download anything from any VHD from Azure. The other point you have to remember is that you do have the kind of bandwidth you need to download a VHD, which is 40 gigs, 50 gigs, or sometime it could be like 100 gigs, right? Or even more. You have to make sure that you have the right kind of space and the bandwidth. You cannot go crazy and attach as many data disks as you want to a virtual machine. You have to be very careful. And this is part of planning. All the virtual machines have different sizes, like we talked about in our previous couple of sessions. The size of the virtual machine determines how many data disks that can be associated with the virtual machine. So if you remember the little portal that I had and I asked you all to bookmark where you can go and see the different details of different sizes and what it can do, there is that information over there that says that how many data disks can be there on that size of a VM. So you cannot have like a small size VM and attach 10 data disks to it. No, you probably need an A3, A4, A5, one of those larger ones where multiple data disks can be there. Okay, so for today's point of view, these are the 7 things that we are going to do. And this is separated based on things that we do in Azure directly. And then there are tasks that we will do after we have uploaded a VHD to Azure and the operations we perform on that. So the first thing we are going to do is create a new data disk from the management portal and PowerShell. So we will create a brand new data disk and attach it, that is in point 2, to a virtual machine from Azure. So we are not going to do uploading or anything. We are going to just do this from management portal. And the VM will have a data disk, and I'll show you how to attach and associate that to the VM to access it with the label or whatever. The third point over here is that create a local data VHD. So before we upload a data VHD, we have to create one. You might already have a data VHD that's there with your Hyper-V or VMware system, but I'm going to show you how to do this for this lab to create a data VHD on your computer and upload that to Azure. So that will be number 4. That will take the VHD and take it from our on-prem PC, which is my client PC I have always been working on with you guys, and we're going to move that to Azure. Number 5, and this is something you have to remember, as you upload a VHD to Azure in your storage account, it will be a .vhd file, and it's a raw VHD file that's sitting there. In Hyper-V or VMware, you could always somehow take that VHD and attach it to your VM directly. There are multiple options to do that, right? I mean, you can just go to the settings and attach that VHD as a disk to your virtual machine. On Azure, you cannot do that. Every VHD, doesn't matter it's a data or operating system VHD, will have to be done. I mean, it's something like registering it or associating it with Azure first. You'll see a lot of documentation where they call it registering it. Somewhere they call it associating it. Sometimes they call creating a disk from a VHD. I'm like, well, VHD is a virtual hard drive disk. What do you mean by creating? So another disk. It's a little confusing, but this is what they call it, registering or associating or creating an Azure disk from a VHD. So I'll show you that part as well. What do they actually mean by that? These are actually the confusing parts where if you try to look for this yourself and try to figure out like what do you mean by registering a VHD? Well, I'll show you all of that. Number 6 is now taking that Azure disk and attaching it to the VM from the management portal. This is going to be something like point 1. Yeah, well, point 2, if when you associate the data disk to a VM. So this is going to be similar. And the next would be number 7, and the last thing we're going to do today is attach the Azure disk with the VM from PowerShell. So I'm going to show you both ends, okay? So there's a bunch of stuff to cover, and there'll be a lot of things I'll be discussing, and this session is going to be heavy hands-on demonstration. So make sure that you have your environment up and running in Azure portal, and we can work on this together, okay? So let's go to my client machine. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the number of data disks that can be associated with a VM. I'm pretty sure some of you have looked at this site earlier in my previous sessions and pretty much ignored it. This is a site you want to bookmark. This is very important. Virtual machine and cloud service sizes for Azure. This is the URL. Pause the video, take it, bookmark it because it is important. What I want to show you over here was the size of the virtual machine and data disks, right? So we have been working with the standard tiers, that extra small, small, and all that, as you can see. Now they actually do that, so you can remember this is A0, A1, but it just named differently. So things, when you do this in PowerShell, you can actually address them directly. But look at this. When we did something like a small VM or A1 or A0, the maximum number of data disks that can be there, 1 terabyte each, can be there was 1. So you cannot take a small VM and attach more than 2 data disks. So if you have something like a SQL server which can have 4 to 5 data disks, depending on how much of a best practice you're following for data and logs and backups and stuff like that, you probably want to make sure first you do some planning and finding out that which virtual machine size you need to attach the number of data disks. Obviously, if you're trying to do SQL on a small, it's probably already messed up because it's one core with 1.7 gigs of memory. You cannot even have a decent 2012 R2 on that these days. But what I mean is this is where you need to come and look at that information, all right? It's virtual machine cloud services size for Azure. All right, so moving on to my portal, as you can see, I have already done a couple of things here. Not a whole lot that you won't be able to follow if you want to go and follow with the video here. I just created a virtual machine, a regular virtual machine called C-Ranger VM05. It's a virtual machine. I think it was a standard virtual machine A3 or something similar. And when I was creating this virtual machine, I actually created a storage account first. I know that we have not talked about a lot of storage accounts, but we'll be doing this in details later. But now that we are talking about a data disks and VHDs and images and all that stuff, we will be spending some time in storage here, okay? So I have already a storage account rather than a random alphanumeric one that you might have already seen when you create a virtual machine. I actually created a storage account first, and then when I was creating a virtual machine from the gallery, I chose this account just so it looks a little bit decent, like I called it Ranger Store. This has to be unique, by the way, so you need to pick up something, a name of your own. In the Ranger store, obviously, when the virtual machine was created, it created a VHDs container. If you go in the container, you can see there, since I created the C-Ranger 005, there are 2 files over here. One is a VHD and one is a status file. Just ignore this Azure Win8 VHD for now. This is I'm using that for something else. So just remember that these are the 2 files that are there in storage. And there's another thing for PowerShell you have to remember when we do this storage thing is that there is this link here, HTTPS. It always starts, the schema of this link will always start with the account name. So Ranger Store was my storage account name. If you are doing something else, that will be how it is over here. This is the storage name. blob.core.windows.net. This is a standard. It will always have that. Since this was in the VHDs container, which is a container that Azure always creates if you use the storage account and you want to create a virtual machine, VHDs container. And look at this. This is the entire name of the VHD that is for the virtual machine. Okay, so this VHD is very familiar to you. if you're doing virtualization on-prem, you know that your virtual machine is going to have a VHDX or a VHD, and this is what it is, and this is the status file. Okay, so you remember that. And one thing I have noticed while working with this storage account and storage in general in virtual machines and Azure over here is that anytime I do any operation, I actually press F5 or I go and refresh this. There are times I got really burnt because it just never updated the portal, and I was like, where did my storage or the VHD go? And I couldn't find it, and I retried it only to find out that the VHD already existed, a lot of errors, script broke down. Well, always hit this refresh when you create something and do with the storages. Okay, I have RDP'd to the Syringer 005 VM as well, as you can see. I have nothing except a C drive, and this is the temporary D drive, which is just for temporary storage that, data loss warning and everything that Microsoft tells you here. You do not want to do anything here in this storage. So this is the basic stuff that comes out of the box, okay? I've not done anything new or different. Feel free to go and do this yourself before we get started to the next part. So there are a couple of tabs over here. One is images. We do not have any images created. And we have disks. You have to understand one thing about this disks tab is that when you come to the disks over here, you see a name of a disk. This is not necessarily the VHD name, okay? So if we go to storage, if we came over here, we went to containers, VHDs, that disk name may not be same as this VHD's name. Look at this VHD name. It actually tells you the date when this was created. Today is actually the April 5th, 2015, and this is what it's telling you the VHD was created, okay? This name of this VHD is not going to be the same as the name you will find under disks over here, okay? That means that this virtual machine is using this disk, and this is the name of the disk, and this name is associated with a VHD. I could not find a way to find out how this disk name can be associated. So if you have multiple disks over here with multiple VMs, it's very hard to find out that which disk is this and associated with which virtual machine. There's one good thing about PowerShell over here is that, let me minimize this for now. There's a commandlet called get Azure disk, and become very familiar with this commandlet here. What this will do is that this will show you that you have a disk and the name of the disk is this. You'll notice that this is the same name as this disk name here. And it also tells you that it is attached to who? It's actually attached to the deployment or the hosted service name or the role name Syringer VM05. So this is the easiest way to find out that which this disk name is associated with which VM. And also, if you look at this, you remember this media link or this URL for that? rangerstore.blobcore blah blah blah. And this was the VHD that is associated with this virtual machine. So this virtual machine's disk is this VHD. Obviously, you're wondering what is the source image name. There's another VHD here. Well, this is the image where it was deployed from. You remember the server 2012 R2 data center? That is what this one is. Okay, we don't need this one for now. It's just a good way to see which image this was deployed from. But for our point of tasks here is that this is the one we are interested in. The name is the one we are interested in as well. The name. This one is we are interested in it as well. And obviously Syringer VM05. So that's one way to find out that what it is. In Azure, and this is something I said I'll explain later, was that you upload a VHD or you have a VHD. The VHD name is not going to be same as the disk name. When you register it, you remember that tricky little thing I was saying? When you register it, when you associate it, or when you create a disk from a VHD, this is the name that will be actually created for you. And it's remembered, and I'm spending so much time explaining this because this is a very big point of confusion with virtual machines. When you have tons of them, you come to the disks and you wonder which one the hell is it, right? So let's go ahead and start with our first task, which was what? Which was create a new data disk from management portal. The easiest way to attach a data disk from the management portal is this, attach. We have only one option here because we do not have any other VHDs or disks, is to attach an empty disk. We'll say, okay, let's attach an empty disk. It's very intuitive. It's actually already going and finding out which is the storage account. So if you have a multiple storage account, you don't have to worry about anything. It will pick up the storage account where the virtual machine is residing, right? So picked on that, and look at it, picked on the container as well. It's saying that I'm going to create an empty data disk and attach it to this virtual machine, okay? The name of the file is going to be something like this, okay? I usually don't like this. I want to do something more, readable and understandable. So I'm going to create this disk, and I know that I'm going to attach this as an F drive to the virtual machine. Make sure this is part of your planning. If you already have an F drive, this name will not make too much sense. So I'll just call this F drive, and I'll just call this F drive, okay? So this disk is going to be with this name, .vhd. And I'm going to, just for this example or this demo purpose, I'll just make it 1 gig. There's something called as host cache preference. Feel free to read this from here. I usually keep it on no because for my scenario, I don't need any host cache preference. There are certain scenarios where you want to make it read only, read write and all that stuff, and it might give you a performance boost. For our purposes, host cache preference will always keep it no. So that's all there is to it. Click on this, okay? It does not take a whole lot of time to make this. It's usually less than a minute. I'm going to pause anyways, but it will take 30-40 seconds to make this data disk and attach it as well. Yeah, that took about 15 seconds or so. Now it is successfully attached an empty disk to the virtual machine disk. Okay, so the first thing like I said, the first thing after any storage task you want to do is hit on refresh. And the reason I do that is because I'll probably go over there and not find it or find the stuff that I want to show you. So I always, restart or refresh the browser to make sure everything just populates fine. Okay. It's supposed to show up, but sometimes it doesn't. Okay, but we are back to where we were. The thing that I want to show you right now is go to storage here, go to your storage account, go to containers, and in container VHDs, look at this. So it went to create a new VHD with the name that we provided. And this is the location it is at, right? It's the same Ranger store because that's the storage account. How much more readable is this? This is so easy, right? You know which virtual machine it is. You know which drive it's going to be. It's perfect. And that's why, sometimes you have to put custom names and stuff. If you have 20 virtual machines here and they all are stored in the same storage account, it'll be very hard for you to identify which one it is. So that's one thing. The other thing I want to show you over here is let's go to virtual machines. Let's go to the disks and see what happens here. Well, guess what? There is another disk name over here. And this is the attached disk name. Look at this. It says it's attached to C-Ranger VM05. It contains an OS? No, because this is a data disk. Host cache? None. And it's the subscription name. Looking at this directly, you can find out that last one, this is the one we had previously, right? It actually has the OS. This is the disk where the operating system is installed for C-Ranger 005, this whole virtual machine. Well, now my question is, if you have a ton of stuff in here, how are you going to know which one is what? Again, you go back over here, to this PowerShell thing. And what we are going to do is clear the screen. We're going to run get Azure disk again. Let's do that. Now you can see there are two disks, right? One was this one from previous one, and we can know right away that this was OS disk because there's a source image and it actually has the OS as Windows. But with the second disk, you can see this is the disk name. Obviously, it is a data disk, so it does not have a source image name or OS at all. But it also tells you which virtual machine it is associated with. But the most important one I wanted to show you was the media link. Okay, it actually tells you which VHD this disk is associated with. We know that it's C-Ranger VM05 F drive. So if we look over here, it's 796 at the end over here. So let's minimize this so it's easy for us to view the whole thing. By looking at this, we can say that this 796 ending, so this disk name over here, or this registration of that VHD over here, is actually the one that's connected to the virtual machine. Okay, when you have a ton of virtual machines in here, guys. This is very important to identify because by looking at this, there's no way if you have 20 virtual machines, you can find out what this is. You'll be like, okay, I know it's with C-range at 05 because it says over here, but what is the VHD it is associated with? Well, the only way to find this out is over here with this get Azure disk commandlet. Okay, so now that's done, let's actually go to the virtual machine and see what's going on there. Okay, so we knew there was a C drive, we knew there was a D drive, but how do you attach that extra disk, right? Well, the way you can do that, and this is similar to your on-premise, is that you come to your disk management. The minute you come to disk management, you'll see a little pop-up momentarily. All right, say that there's a disk that is there for you. Click on OK. We know that there was a disk that was going to be provided to us. See, it's right now unallocated, okay? So we have to allocate this. So let's go ahead and right-click over here and do a new simple volume. Click on Next. We're going to take the entire gig. So 1021, this is in, megabytes. That's why it's saying this, but this is 1 gig. Let's click on Next. And you remember the reason we, made the disk with F drive over here was because I was going to choose the F drive and click on Next. Make sure you do a quick format over here. The reason you want to do a quick format, and I have mentioned this I think before, is because Azure will bill you based on the data that's written. So if this is going to be a 100 gig disk, you're not going to be charged for the entire 100 gigs. You're only going to be charged for the amount of data that was written. So if you are going to have like 5 gigs of data written on a 100 gig disk, you're going to be only, charged for 5 gigs. When you do a quick format, it does not go and 0 or 1 out the whole disk for you. So if you know what quick format is or regular format is, you'll understand that you want a quick format because you don't want to go through the entire drive. Click on Next and finish. This is going to be very, very easy. It's doing the quick formatting right now. If you come to this PC here, momentarily, you'll see the F drive. And here you go. This is the F drive. You can now create folder, create text document, whatever you did, store your database for your SQL or whatever. But now you have an F drive. Quick note, this is actually there are IOPS connection, like how much you can read, write, what is the speed of reading and writing on this disk. It's usually 500 in Azure. So if you are doing SQL and you need more speed on your data disks, I know this is off topic, but make sure you do something called a storage space on server 2012 R2. You can have 3 drives, stripe them, and make sure you get a higher throughput or higher IOPS from those disks. But by default, it's 500. I'm just wondering if the document over here actually told us that. Yep, it did. So you can see it's 500 per disk. So to have like a very high IOP, like for 2000 IOPS, you'd actually do something like an A2 medium, and you do 4 into 500. So you have to make sure you attach 4 data disk, go to storage space, and make it as a 1 data disk with whatever speed you need. So for SQL and stuff, this is more important, but for beginners and stuff that we are doing right now, this is a little off topic, but this is where you would come and find that information. Okay, so now that this stuff is over here, let's go ahead and I want to show you a bunch of other stuff. So I'm going to take this out. The way you do that is you come over here and take that offline. So once you take that offline, you'll see that it has disappeared, no F drive, and it has this little red arrow down over here that's saying this is offline. You want to do that to, take that or detach the disk. So attaching was very simple. Now that the attach was done, we want to detach it. You'll see there's an option called detach disk. And when you click on detach disk, you'll see that this virtual machine has all these disks attached. 0796. So if you have multiple, and this is actually using the disk name, right? This is the same disk name we found over here. And I clicked on OK, so it's going to go and start detaching that. But as you can see, 0796. So if you have multiple disks, once again, make sure you come over here and find out which one you're detaching before you actually go and detach that. So you can see I clicked on OK, so it's actually detaching the disk. It takes a little bit of time to detach it. And you can see successfully detached the disk. If you come on disks, you are still going to see it. Let's go ahead and refresh. It says it's attached to. These are the things, the nuances that this management portal has. So I'm going to refresh this and see what happens. Let it load. and the disks over here still shows it. And I know that's actually not accurate because, that disk is actually detached right now. So it might take a little bit of time. It might take a little refreshing or whatever you may. Now, the thing you want to remember is when you detach a disk, the VHD itself is not actually, completely detached in the sense means it's not deleted. The VHDs are still there. So even if you do this by mistake and you're like, oh my God, what to do? Don't worry, the disk is most likely still there. Um, yeah, it still shows it's attached, whatever. So we come to storage over here, click on Ranger Store, you come to container, and come to VHDs, you'll see that your F drive is still there. The only way you can delete this is hitting the delete over here and actually deleting the VHD. If you detach it completely, it's not deleted. So if you do that by mistake, obviously if you're doing something in production, that'll make a lot of mess. Most likely it's going to tell you that it's already not, detached from the virtual machine here. So anyways, as you can see, it has disappeared here. The reason it has disappeared because it has been detached, and obviously when we brought the VM down, the drive down, it already had disappeared from there. The part that I wanted to show you was over here, that you can see it has disappeared. The virtual machine no longer has a hold on this disk, even though our portal here is lying to us a little bit, saying that it is still attached. Let me refresh that a little bit. I wonder how long it takes to actually upload that and tell me that it has been, it's no longer associated with that. For the next part, so we covered the first 2 points, I think, over here. We created the data disk. I am going to show you how to do this in PowerShell, by the way, right now. We also did the associate newly created data disk to a VM. Okay, so let's go back and see if it's loaded. Oh, praise the Lord. It's no longer attached to. So it at last updated that it's no longer attached to the virtual machine. And that's what I kept saying, right? I found those little nuances here, little quirks that you have to refresh and you have to make sure that it's gone. But obviously, it's still there in the containers, okay? This you have to delete by yourself. So let's go ahead and try deleting that. Click on, make sure you have the right VHD, delete that, and see what happens. Uh, because it's associated with the virtual machine, we know it's not. So let's go ahead and delete disk and blob. So let's go do that. So it is. Do not just go randomly be very happy and click on everything. You have to make sure that you are reading all the warning messages. So let's go ahead and delete that. It'll take some time. Okay, so it has been deleted. It says deleted blob.vhd. Okay, as you can see, it has disappeared from here. Okay. Even though it disappeared, I'm going to go ahead and refresh this anyways. So let's go to PowerShell and show you how to create a disk and attach it to the virtual machine. So yeah, this is the part we are doing right now, the PowerShell part over here. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go to PowerShell real quick. And this is the little script or commandlet that's going to do that. I'm not going to have, these are so small, so I'm not going to save this for you and make it available. So feel free to pause and write this down or practice this. You should be practicing this anyway, so let's do that. So what I'm doing here is clearing the host, which is self-explanatory. My storage account. So you need the storage account. You remember that our storage account was called Ranger Store. The best way to find the store name is from here. You come to the store over here, storage, and this is the name of your account, Ranger Store. Or in PowerShell, there is another command you can call. I know we'll do this later, but I'm just tempted to give it to you right now. Get Azure Storage Account. This is the commandlet. If you do that, bam, it will show you over here, and it will show you the storage name. And I'm trying to look for that as well right now. The label is the Ranger Store is the name, okay? And this is the name I was looking for actually, the storage account name, Ranger Store. Okay, so we know this is the storage account name. Media location. So you have to give a location where you are creating that. So the way you create that is, remember that format, HTTPS. So this is the media location. Storage account. So it will take this storage account from the Ranger Store. So this will become rangerstore.blob.core.net VHDs. This is what we know it was, right? So if you go to Ranger Store, you go to the container. We want this to be in the VHDs. So essentially, I'm taking this link, and I'm just trying to make this look a little better and a little bit modular. So you can do this with your storage account. So I'm doing all the stuff. You could have put Ranger Store right over here or the name of your account right over here. And I'm saying it's going to be in this container. So up to this much, I have picked it up from here. Okay. And now I'm giving it a name. It has to be a unique name. I'm calling it cranger05. It's going to be F drive, so it's going to be F drive.vhd. I'm keeping it similar to the same name we had last time. And it has to be .vhd, so I put it .vhd. Now, get Azure VM, and this is the part we already know. This is how you get a virtual machine from Azure. Pipe it to, because we are going to work on this virtual machine, so I'm going to pipe it to add Azure disk. This is how you add a data disk to the virtual machine, or just create a data disk. Add Azure data disk. Okay, there's another one called add Azure disk, but add Azure data disk. Create new, because you are creating a new data disk. What is the size in gigs? This one I'm going to make it 5 gigs. So disk size in gigs, GB, is 5. What is the label of the disk? We'll just call it my data. This is going to be LUN0. I'll come back to this momentarily, what this LUN0 is. And media location. Where do you want to create this? Well, this is where we want to create it with this name. So you have to give the entire name. So media location. And you have to remember that update Azure VM is done as well for this changes to reflect. Okay, so if we run this commandlet, it will go and create and do whatever we just did earlier. And you will have this data disk over here. You'll have to rerun this or rescan this to ensure that you see this over here. I'm not going to go with that procedure, but this is similar to what we did over here, which was coming to this VM and attach the disk. Okay. The part that I want to explain over here is LUN0, because when we are doing this on Azure Management Portal, a lot of things are done for you. LUN0, it's the logical unit for your data. If you guys are familiar with the storage account, storage area network like SAN, you'll remember there are multiple LANs. So the first data disk that you attach will always be LUN0. The second disk you attach, if you run this commandlet over here, is going to fail because they will tell you that, hey, there's something on LUN0 already. There's a data disk there. So if I want to attach the second data disk over here, I'll make this LUN1. Since there is no data disk, we deleted everything from here. There was nothing attached after the last step. LUN0 is okay. But for when you are doing a production environment, you need multiple data disks. You have to ensure that you understand this LUN0, 1, and you have to make sure this index number is taken care of properly. And you have to keep a tab on that. So let's go ahead and run this command. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but let's run on it. There's not a lot that will be verbose, so you're not going to see a lot of things here. So I'm going to pause and come back. Took a few seconds, but you can see the update Azure succeeded. The best way to check this out is actually also refresh this. I actually did it once, so I can see that the disk is being created and the disk was registered. So when you do this from the management portal, or when you are going to do this from here, this will already do the registration for you. So under the disk name over here, yeah, it refreshed. Now you can see it has been already attached to. Come back to storage. Same thing, containers, you should see that it's already there. The VHD that we had created, okay? So you have to remember how this PowerShell works. Yeah, cranger fdrive.vhd, that's how we did. That was the name in the media location, so it picked up that name and it did that. To make this a little bit modular, you could have had another variable and all that, but if you want to get funky with your script, please go ahead and do that. But this is how you attach a disk, create and attach a new disk from PowerShell. So we have done the first two. Now, let's go to step 3, where we create a local data VHD. Okay, so let's go to our client system again. Okay, so let's go ahead and create the data disk on premises. So at this point, if you are at a production environment, you'll probably go to your SAN storage or whatever and pick up the VHD from, or pick up the VHDX, whichever it is. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create a data disk for our lab environment here and take that and then upload that. It's going to be something very small as well. So let's see how we can do this. The first thing we're going to do is, and by the way, I'm on a Windows 8.1, so I just want to remind you that this is how we are doing it for my client system. You might do it a little bit differently. So this is my client computer we have always been using. This is on premise, right? So what you can do is come over here, and in action you can see create VHD. Okay, so to create VHD, I want to create a VHD. Well, let's put it in my temp. Okay, so if I do temp, let's put a file name. I'll just call it my data dot. It will be VHD anyways. So let's just call it my data. Click save. Should call it. I don't know. I do have a script for this. So what was the name? My data disk. Okay. Just don't want to show that to you yet. So my data disk. You can name anything actually. Okay. Name it anything. I want a VHD. For our case, I just want to demonstrate this. So let's make it dynamic expanding. It's not going to be a whole lot. I want to make this file really small so the uploading happens while we are talking. So let's make it only 10 megs. Obviously, in your production, it will probably be gigs or terabytes. Only 10 megs. And do OK. As you can see, it's not initialized. So initialize the disk. Oops, not GPT. Too fast. Do this MBR. And give it a new simple volume. Give it whatever the name you want. E drive, that's fine. Perform a quick format. Don't care, don't care. E drive. So as you can see, in temp, there was a VHD that was first created. Okay, but I took this VHD and I also attached that VHD as E drive. Okay, so let's come over here and put a text document, and I'll call it my important data. And let's write something over here. My important data resides here. Okay, just something random. So what happened? A couple of things happened here. First of all, in C drive under temp, I actually created a VHD called my data disk. And I took that VHD and I also attached that VHD to my this client computer directly, and I called it E drive. So this is how you take a VHD and access that while it's on the client. I know it's a crazy thing, so you go in there and you have this data. You might not have to do this in production because you might already have a data disk with a VHD somewhere. So now I'll take this. I just wanted to write some data in here. That's why I attached it. Otherwise, we could have just gone away creating that VHD from here and not do anything. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring this down. So make it offline. And I'm going to detach the VHD. Okay. See, it's actually telling you that it's going to be unavailable. So when you do this, you'll find out that when you come over here, there's no longer an E drive, but the VHD is still going to be there, right? This is what we are interested in. So we now have a VHD which actually has some data in there, and the whole idea right now is to upload this VHD to your Azure cloud environment and take that VHD in the cloud environment and attach to a virtual machine and attach the data. Guys, this is the true essence of cloud, and I'm now showing you something that you will most likely be doing in production environment to move your data, or to move. This could have been an OS virtual hard drive, which we'll do as well. Will be there. You are now migrating your data to the cloud. Okay, this is really, really something that's what extending the cloud is all about, or migrating to the cloud is all about. This is very important, not only for your exam, but also for production work. So what are we doing here? So remember that this is where it is. ctemp my data VHD, my data disk VHD. Okay. So I have a script here. That script actually does this for you. I'm saying the VHD source is my data disk.vhd. My data disk.vhd. Absolutely have to make sure this is the right name. Which storage account is it going to? Well, it's going to Ranger Store. This is the same account we are going to. Destination, you're already familiar with this. So it's going to storage account blob core windows.net VHDs my data disk.vhd. So this name could be different from this name, but I want to keep it similar. So I want to give it the same name. So this is a couple of stuff that I did over here, fancy, so it tells you that it's uploading this disk right now and all that. But the one that you need to see over here is the add Azure VHD. Okay, this is not the same as add Azure data disk we had in the last script. This is something called add Azure VHD. Add Azure VHD actually uploads the disk to your cloud. The local file path is the source, as the destination is over here. And when it's done, I'm going to do that. So remember this for your exam and your production work. Add Azure VHD. Adding Azure VHD means it's actually uploading it. Okay. I'm going to go through this entire upload process for you to actually show you how much a 10 megs takes to upload. Guys, you know what? I have done this with Azure VHD for another session where we took this Windows Azure 8 VHD. This is actually an entire VM. It's only 7.5 gigs, but this 7.5 gigs, because it's dynamic, whatever, it will convert it to whatever fix. Took me an hour and a half to upload it with my home connection, which gives me like 10 megabits upload speed. Okay, so I hope you're going to have better luck with this in your environment with 100 megabits upload speed, bandwidth pipe. But this 7 gigs took me like an hour and a half just to give you a perspective of an entire virtual machine, which could be like 40, 50 gigs. It can take you significantly a lot of time. Okay, so you have to remember that don't go crazy thinking that in 4 hour maintenance window, I'm going to take this entire virtual machine and upload it to Azure. No, it's not going to happen. If it's a lot of disk, a lot of data in it, it takes time. Anyways, this is not a whole lot of data or a VHD over here, only 8 megs because we know it was dynamic, right? And the 2 megs is used for the systems or whatever. So let's go ahead and run this. So this is basically starting to upload, and this is the stuff that it's saying. It's creating. It's doing some upload stuff. Just because it was 10 megs, it was uploaded in super duper speed, okay? So let's go to the store over here. Wow, this thing is in a mess. I need to go ahead and run the refresh from here. Give me a moment. Wow, guys, I actually had to restart my browser. That thing was really messed up, but that kind of shows you that how this storage things sometimes don't, update properly. But let's go to Ranger Store. Go to our container. Go to our VHDs. And what can you see here? My data disk.vhd. Wow. So it actually got uploaded and it's right here. Took a couple of seconds to actually go and upload it because it was just 10 megabytes. But I told you, like, it can take a long time if it's really, 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 really large file, right? Anyway, so we have accomplished uploading this to this VHD over here. Let's go to our virtual machine. Come to the disks here. As you can see, that VHD was uploaded, but that disk is no longer here. This disk, and I have left this from the previous session, 0611. Let's find out who it belongs to, because right now we are all confused. If you are in storage, if you are in Ranger Store and go to container, like which VHD belongs to what? We do not know any longer because we have like 1, 2, 3, 4 VHDs here. Like I don't even remember. So let's go over here. You remember the commandlet we had to do? Get Azure. What was it? Get Azure disks. Get Azure data disks. We'll do get Azure disk. Okay, let's hit enter and see what's going on here. So there are two disks here that are registered, and they actually have a disk name. So one was obviously the VHD with the OS on it. This is the one from previous one, the C-Ranger 05 drive. But as you can see that our other VHD, my data disk.vhd, is not registered. Means it's not provided to Azure. It's not associated with Azure, and it's not made available to do any tasks on. So this is a little different from on-premises, and this is what I was explaining earlier, that when we were doing things from management portal, this all association and everything was done for us. But when you upload a VHD, it's not made available to you under the disks tab. I mean, it's not there for you to do anything with. So this is what I mean. If you come to C-Ranger VM05 right now and do attach disk, you'll see that there is a new option here that's called attach an empty disk, attach disk. Attach an empty disk was something that was there last time when we did this. Azure realizes that you actually have a disk there, but that's not associated yet, but it gives you that option saying that, hey, do you want to attach a disk? If you do that, under the available disk, you see 611. And when you see 611, you're like, who's this name? Well, 611 was the name for this F drive that's stuff from the last one. We still do not have our data disk.vhd. There's no way you can attach data disk.vhd over here, my datadisk.vhd over here, because it's not made available to the virtual machine. It did get an option to attach a new disk. This option was not there in the last one. You might be able to rewind a little bit and go back and see this option was not there the first time we attached the empty disk. Just because that disk was a VHD was uploaded, it's giving that option. But when we actually go to attach it, we can't find it. So what do? So the next option is that you come to disks over here and you go and create or associate or register, whatever the name you can find on the internet. It doesn't matter. It's all the same. We are basically making it available to Azure, and the way you do that is you click on create, name it. What is the name? I want to keep it same as my previous, the name we have given it, my data disk. So let's name it my data disk. Go to VHD URL. So click on this. It's a very nice option that they give you. So expand that. Click on VHDs. It's telling you which VHD do you want to associate or register. Well, this is the one we uploaded. So we want this one. Click on open. And does this VHD contain an operating system? No, it doesn't, because this is a data disk. So do not check that. And basically click on OK. And this is something I wanted to show you over here, was that when we tried to upload that, it actually gave us an error saying the VHD must be at least 20 megabytes in size. So you have to remember, for registering, you at least need 20 megabytes in size of a VHD that is uploaded. Do you recall the one we had created and uploaded when we were creating that? Well, we did like a 10 megabytes. That's not going to work. Okay, so I wanted to demo that and show that to you as well. But once it's registered, it's going to be displayed over here. So let me come back and show you that. Okay, so I went and recreated my data disk.vhd, which was 100 megs rather than 10. And I'm trying to now, I went to disk, and this time you are seeing that actually it's working out. So it already gave it a decent name. It's not something weird like C Ranger and this weird name. So it created a disk, and it registered with Azure as my data disk. It's currently not attached to anybody, no operating system, nothing. But obviously, right? I mean, that's what it is. Like everything else is the same in the container. You'll see that it's just my data disk.vhd. There's nothing different about this. So our whole goal was to take this and attach it to C Ranger VM005. Now that we have registered it and it showed up here, this is the uploaded disk. Let's go ahead and see if we can attach it this time. So we were able to go to this point last time, but in the drop down this time you can see there's a my data disk. And who's my data disk? Once again, if you come over here, CLS, get Azure disk. This time, if you'll see that there is something called as my data disk, it's not attached to anybody, but it's there for you. So it's so much better once you upload it and give it a name. So let's leave everything the way it is. Click OK. Okay, it took a few seconds, but it successfully attached my data disk. Click OK. Come to images over here. Oops, disks over here. You can see my data disk. It's attached to C Ranger VM05. Let's go to C Ranger VM05. You can see that it showed up. It's 100 megabytes. Remember, I re-uploaded it with 100. So it's showing up over here. If it doesn't, always do this rescan or hit this refresh button. It's offline, so we need to bring this online right now. So let's go ahead and click on online. It went and picked up on the F drive because it remembered that. And if we come to F drive, you remember the data that we had written on premise, my important data. And if you go in there, my important data resides here. So guys, this is what happened. We now took a data disk with the data, uploaded it, registered it to Azure, made it available for a virtual machine to attach to it, made our virtual machine associate that data disk with itself, and we attached it over here. Now we have access to our on-premise data in the VM that's residing in Azure. Okay, isn't that cool or what? So now this virtual machine actually has that. So that's how you do it, and you do it from the management shell with the uploading and all that stuff. So let's come over here. This is how we uploaded the data disk. Now, how do you do the whole attaching and registering thing with PowerShell, right? So that would be the next logical step. So I do have two things over here. I'm not going to completely run it, but this is the script. Feel free to pause and write this all down. I'm going to explain you the difference. So what happens if the VHD is uploaded and already registered? What does that mean? Means you are up to this point where the data disk was created. This create over here is actually what it means, registering the VHD with Azure. And this part was done. If this part was already done and all you want to do is attach it to the VM, this is the script. Get the storage account, get Azure VM, Ranger VM05, and you do add Azure disk. This is similar to the very first one we did, add Azure disk, where we were creating a new one for 5 gigs. This one is similar, but you can see over here, this is not create new, it's called import. The reason it's called import, the names are all messed up. All you are doing is associating the data disk with your, or attaching the data disk with your VM. You are doing this. You're doing this part, attach disk. But for some reason, they thought that they need to call this import. So you are adding it as your disk and you're importing it, and you are giving that data disk name. So this name and this name has to be the same. My data disk. You need to take this name, copy it, and you need to put this over here. That's why this is something that's already registered. You will not get this disk name if it is not already registered, okay? And we are putting this on LUN 0 because this is the first disk we are putting in there. Remember the whole LUN thing I told you? So LUN 0, and you are uploading it. So this is if you already have the VHD already registered and the disk name is available to you. Don't forget this switch. This was dash import. The same commandlet we used with create new to create the data disk when we were doing from management portal. Okay. What if the VHD was not registered? The very first thing, you uploaded it and that's all you did. You did not register, you did not do anything. Well, the way you do that is, once again, you need the storage account and you will need a media location. The media location will be very, very familiar to you. So you are going to say that this is where my media location is. This is where I uploaded my VHD, my data disk.vhd. This is the location. This is the commandlet you need to give. Up to this much you already know already. This is how you're getting the virtual machine. Add as your disk is the same commandlet, but this time you're going to do import from. Okay? You're importing it from the disk level. You're going to call it my data disk. And this is the media location. You need to put the media location. This is where your uploaded disk is. And again, in LUN 0, LUN 1, depending on which number it is. So the main thing you have to remember to do this in PowerShell once you upload it is this switches over here, import from and import. And every time you upload, and let me reiterate that once again, every time you upload a VHD, you need to register it, or you need to create, or you need to associate it with Azure first. You have to make sure it is available under the disks tab before you can do any virtual machine operations with that VHD. Okay, if you forget that, you're going to go crazy and you're going to be like, how come I cannot associate this with the attached disk over here? The reason you cannot is because it is not going to be available to you. And by the way, now, as you can see, it's not available any longer because it's already associated, right? That's another thing. It's already attached to the virtual machine. So make sure you're under the disk tab and you do the create and register the disk before it's available to you. And for your exam point of view, as well as production, make sure you understand the add as your data disk. Add as your data disk has create new, import, and import from. If you do a create new, this is what will create a new, no uploading, nothing. It create a new data disk for you with 5 gigs or whatever this storage capacity you want to put over here. If you already have it uploaded and registered from the management portal, you use dash import and put the disk name. This name has to be the same as the name over here. You have registered it as. If you have done nothing, you just uploaded it, then you are going to run this one. Add as your data disk and dash import from, and this will go ahead and do that for you. Okay? That pretty much brings us to our very last one here, close to the very last one, where we went and created a local VHD. We uploaded the data VHD from on-prem to Azure. We registered, associated, or create. These names are going to be used interchangeably on the UI and PowerShell. So this is the part we did. We attached the Azure Data Disk with VM from the management portal. I've shown you that, and attached the Azure Disk with the PowerShell as well. With the PowerShell, the registration number 5 and number 7 are together using the import from, and this was actually attached, the regular attach we showed already. Okay. There's one last thing that's not part of the list I want to show as well is how do you remove it, removing the data disk. Well, if you have the data disk that's already associated with the VM, then remove the association first, right? Like you have to make sure that you actually go and do this part where you go here and you bring this offline and do all of that. You can actually do that with PowerShell here. Let's run that. Took about a minute or so, but once this succeeded, if we go back to the virtual machine, we will see that association has been removed. There's no F drive. It's completely gone. Having done that, you have to remember, as usual, this data disk is not going to get deleted from here, okay? This data disk is just going to still be there. All we did was the detach function. We detached it from the virtual machine. So my data disk.vhdisk is still there, but if you come over here and disks, you will see that it's still there. Let's go ahead and refresh this just to make sure we have the latest status for everything. Okay, as you can see, it's already gone. The association is done. So you go to my store over here, go to containers, go to VHDs. This disk is still there. Only the association has been lost. And how do you delete that? Well, you come over here. The commandlet is remove Azure disk name. You remember the disk name was still there. So this is the disk. This is the name you're picking up from, my data disk. You take that name and you delete that. And you have to put the -delete VHD switch to actually delete that from there. I'm not going to run this, but it actually deletes the VHD. It completely removes the VHD file from there. So you have to be careful before you do this. Just removing this association, it's already fine, but sometimes you want to probably keep the data disk around, so you do not want to run this commandlet. If you run this commandlet, it's actually going to delete the VHD file from there. Okay, that's all I wanted to show you. So we have covered quite a bit in this session. Feel free to pause, feel free to follow along. If you have any questions, put it in comments so we can actually work together and make sure that you are successful in performing these tasks. Usually, I try to keep the videos around less than 1 hour, but this went a little bit more because there was so much explanation to do. I want to make sure that while you are following this, you are not following, I mean, we fall in the pitfalls together, or I explain everything for you to make this happen successfully. Okay, so that concludes this session for now. As always, training site is there at cloudranger.net/Azure training. You are on the YouTube channel, Cloud Ranger Network. We have our Twitter, and you can, of course, email me at sean@cloudranger.net. I'm a little bit slow this week with the holidays and everything to respond to my emails or to respond to the YouTube comments, but I'm going to do that momentarily. So give me some time, at least for a couple of days. If you email me, I saw that there were at least 6-7 emails, and I read through them or just went through them, have not replied them. So if you are waiting for a reply, just give me some time. And rather than emailing me, I'm seeing that I'm getting way more emails now. Please go ahead and ask those questions in the comment section. Okay, so that concludes our video for today. Thank you for viewing, and I will be seeing you in the next session. Bye.